Okay, this is a comparison of two 10-gallon insulated stainless mash tuns. The one on the left is the Chapman Brewing ThermoBarrel. The one on the right is BrewTech InfuSsion. The Chapman starts at 256. As you can see, it's a little shorter, but it's got a wider diameter. Maybe a little less volume you'll see in there. That infusion's actually a little more than 10 gallons. The ThermoBarrel comes with an analog thermometer. It's got this port that you can use for recirculation. It's got adapters for different sizes. The infusion doesn't have that unless you buy the 20-gallon version. Both of them have insulated lids. As you look on the inside, you can see that the probe for the thermometer is longer. For this one, it goes deeper into the mash. It is higher up though. You need about 4 gallons of strike water to get it submerged, whereas it's less than 3 for the infusion. So if you're doing like an English mild, you're gonna have to use a handheld thermometer if you want to know the stabilization temp inside of it. As you can see, this one has a domed false bottom. The default for this is a torpedo tube, so you have options. You can change them out. With this one, it's got vinyl tubing. They had a stainless tube originally connecting it, but I guess that wasn't working, so they did this, and they're going to be switching to silicone is my understanding, which is what I'll probably do myself. And then when you look at it, the lid goes in and clamps down for a tighter fit. So you do that over here and over here. It's got these handles that move. It's easier to pick up and tip if you're going in the compost bin or something because it's got a grip kind of on the bottom. So that helps out with lugging it around. And I don't have an exact measurement, but the walls on this one are a little bit thicker, so maybe there's a little bit more insulation to it. For the infusion, you've got a digital thermometer. It does not turn off, so you have to remove the batteries after each use. As you can see, it's got cushioned handles. Makes it a little easier when you're carrying a heavy load. On the inside, you got volume markers. So you can see it goes a little above 10. It's got a false bottom. As you can see, it's fraying some in a couple spots. I've already had to cut out some fray, so it keeps kind of whittling away. And then it's got a sloped, 5-degree slope bottom, and that allows for no wort to be left behind, so no dead space. But the issue is that with that one, you can't, unlike the other one, you can't really disassemble and get into the bottom to clean the tube if you ever need to do that for any reason. The bottom of this one has less grip. It's got 4 feet. They pop out real easily. I've lost them in the yard before and in the compost bin, had to go searching for them. It also means if you're doing something like putting it on a rail, you got to be careful so that it's not on one foot, either none or all. And this cord come out, this is an addition. This goes to a heating element. That's an additional $80. This unit, if I didn't say, starts at $395. The heating element has not worked as advertised for me, and I've emailed with them, and they say it's working. I mean, I've tested it out. I touched the bottom while it's dry. It heats up, but it's. I've done tests where it took 6.5 hours to raise 5 degrees in strike water, where it's supposed to take 1 hour. I've had it drop 3 times. Plenty of times it's not rising fast. When it has worked during a mash, sometimes it's overshot by 2.5 degrees. My mash temperature, so I've gotten very varied results, so I actually stopped using it because it made my mash more unpredictable. If you buy that, it comes with this temp controller box that you can set to different temperatures. As you can see, that light already burned out. This after about just 6 months of use. I've also used the heating element to do a couple of kettle sours, which I've done in the past in addition to regular sours, and never had any issues with any of my sours until I tried 2 batches with this. I had to dump both. In both cases, it said it was holding the temperature just fine at the lower, 100s, but in both cases, it quickly formed a kind of gross film that after a couple days turned pink, smelled horrible the whole time, didn't acidify well. So I don't know if the issue is maybe the bottom, because when you touch it dry, that heating element gets it burning hot. And so I'm wondering if it kills the lactobacillus or something. I'm not really sure. I haven't heard other results on it. And then one more part on the infusion. The indented part around here, this is one area where you can kind of feel some heat loss while you're actually mashing. So that's just one more element between the two designs, whereas the other one doesn't have that sunken in part with less insulation. Alright, so what I'm doing is I'm preheating the tons with the full volume of strike water. This is one thing that SS BrewTech recommended, and Chapman also noted that these metal tons seem to take on more heat than the traditional plastic cooler, and I've definitely seen that result. So by getting it here, I let it sit for 10 minutes, stabilize before doughing in. That way I have one less variable, one less thing I have to worry about absorbing heat. So I only have to worry about the dough in grain, and I get more predictable results this way. So, alright, let's film the other thermometer. As you can see, this one's a lot more responsive. It's already above the temperature. SS is at 160.4. This is at 163, or yeah, 163. So even though it got filled second, it's already responding faster. This is also very helpful when you're doughing in, because as a result, you're getting a more instant response, and you can adjust quicker if you're over or under your temperature target. Whereas with the BrewTech, you know, I've seen big differences between doughing in at 0 minutes versus 10 minutes. They say to wait for 10 minutes to know the stabilization temp. But at that point, if you've been way too hot or way too, especially way too hot, you could have an issue. So with this one, when I take readings, I've done 6 batches with this one, 3 out of the 6. The reading at 0 minutes after dough-in was the exact same temperature at 10 minutes after dough-in. The most it's been off was dropping, either dropping or rising 3 degrees, I don't remember, but it was a 3-degree difference. The other ones were 1 degree difference and 2 degree difference. So this one's a more responsive, quicker thermometer that you can get some good, quicker results with. On this one, I was going to change this out because I also have had issues with the I have 3 handheld thermometers, a glass, a digital, and an analog, and they're all calibrated against each other, and I've gotten wildly different readings from those 3 versus this. Sometimes it's spot on, and other times it's been a good bit different. So I was going to switch out when I was going to keep this one originally to an analog thermometer, but it requires a 3/8 inch one NPT, which is really hard to find. My local homebrew shop, none of their suppliers don't carry that. You know, most people have 1/2 inch, so that would be an issue if you wanted to switch that out. Okay, it's been 10 minutes. The infusion has stabilized down from 163.2 down to 161.3, and the Chapman ThermoBarrel has stabilized from 164 down to 163. So I'm going to dough in now just so you... Alright, so 149.9 on the infusion and 154 on the Chapman. So, but the infusion's likely still coming up. I wasn't watching it, but that's what it looks like. Setting the timer for 10 minutes so we can see what it stabilizes at after 10 minutes. But so, and for disclosure, so I bought the infusion originally. I like the idea of the heating element, so that I could adjust mash temperature just a little bit if I was a little bit off. You know, it's not meant to do step mashes or anything. It's just 5 degrees per hour, and also doing kettle sours for some quicker sours. Then I had concerns about the grain runoff, which I'll show you in a little bit, where when it's done running off, so you've already done the boil off and everything, it starts chugging away at the end and it pulls in bits of grain. And I think the problem, but I'm not sure, is probably that with that 5 degree slope bottom, my understanding is it's meant to catch the grain so it's not running off. But when it's pulling those last few chunks of wort and it's kind of glugging away, it seems to pull out those chunks of grain that were probably caught on the bottom. And I've kind of seen them caught when I would clean it out by just taking everything out manually and lifting out the thing without disturbing it. So you end up with grain in your kettle, which was annoying. And then the other thing, the thermometer not being as responsive and as predictable, so I'd end up sometimes taking a reading at the end, and what I was getting on my handhelds were a lot different than what the digital was saying on the front, so I would end up realizing I had a very low mash or something like that. Had a few imperial German pills and stuff along those lines. And then the heating element, I bought it so that I could add that on because I really liked that feature, but that has not worked for me, so I've stopped using it. So I posted these concerns on Homebrew Talk, and the owner of Chapman actually emailed me and said, do you want to do a swap? I've actually been interested in testing out my competitor's product. So while I did not pay Chapman for the Chapman kettle, I'm trading them the more expensive SS Infusion. And after emailing with Chapman, he actually ended up giving me the option of keeping either one. He said, test them out, and then you can send me. The trade originally was going to be for the Infusion. We said if you end up liking that better and you want to send me the Chapman, you can send me the Chapman. So I have the option of keeping the more expensive Infusion or keeping the Chapman, and I'm definitely keeping the Chapman. I've been very happy with it. It's not had those issues that I've seen with the Infusion. Alright, so we're coming up on 10 minutes. The Chapman ThermoBarrel's at closer to 154, between 154 and 153, and the Infusion is at 149.4. Alright, so it's the end of a 60-minute mash. The Infusion's at 152.4, so it came up from the, I think it was 149 range, rose maybe 3 degrees or so over the course of the mash. The Chapman's held steady right at 154, and we'll zoom in on that one now since it's a little harder to read that one. But this has been pretty similar to my experience. The Chapman holds steady. It'll usually often drop a degree or two over the course of a 60 or 90 minute mash, but sometimes it holds steady. If you strike with preheat water really hot, it'll actually raise up over the course of the mash, but I've dialed it in so I was able to hit my target with just 6 batches. But the Infusion, yeah, it's less predictable, so if you wanted a 154 mash, even if I started a little higher, you've seen how much it changes over the course. Yeah, see how the little more grains accumulated there in the end. And runoff speed hasn't seemed to really affect that either, so you end up with a little layer of grain in the end. Alright, and it's finishing up. You can see it bubbling now, but no extra grain coming out, just a little bit of specks that I didn't get it quite at the beginning, so a lot cleaner of a wort. So after this I'm just going to batch barge and do my brew day, but this has been the comparison, so thank you.